So looking at the current pound for pound rankings, I'm going to be going over them and seeing which one's correct and which one should be changed, because I know there's quite a lot of controversy over the pound for pound rankings. As well as this, I don't feel like there's a specific criteria to allow someone to go over someone in the rankings as well. So starting off with number 14, instead of Hamzat Chimaev, I've put Arman Tasarukian. Tasarukian is a very, very good elite fighter and beats most of the lightweight ranked fighters. He generally does. His last 5 fights, of course, he's on a 4-fight win streak. He did lose to Gamrot, but people did think he won that fight. So other than that, he's a really, really good fighter. Of course, he was set to fight for the title in January, but then I think he got injured. So yeah, I mean, is he next for the title shot? Maybe. Ilia Topuria may fight Arman Tasarukian next, and that's a very hard fight for Ilia Topuria. He has to be in the pound for pound rankings, 100%. However, I've put him at 13 because the resume, of course, lacks the belt. So he's going to be down the far end of the pound for pound rankings. Also, he has not really got top tier finishes apart from Benio Dariush fight. And the most high tier win over Oliveira was also controversial. Therefore, I do feel like Arman Tasarukian should be 14 on the pound for pound list and Hamzat Chimaev should be 13. Therefore, Hamzat Chimaev is 13. He has to be 13 over Arman Tasarukian. He has insane finishes, especially what he did to Robert Whittaker alone makes me put him over Arman Tasarukian. He's generally one of the best UFC fighters, never lost in the octagon. Of course, he hasn't got the belt yet, that's why he's 13. Although he is fighting Dricus du Plessis next month. I got Hamzat winning that. But yeah, generally, look at the amount of wins he's got against high tier opponents. Robert Whittaker, obviously Usman was a bit close. Kevin Holland, Gilbert Burns. Just a really, really good resume so far. And of course, the Robert Whittaker win makes me put him 13. Otherwise, I would have just left him 14. But the way he beat Robert Whittaker with the submission in round 1, unfortunately, and it's true, he absolutely destroyed Robert Whittaker. So yeah, he's a force to be reckoned with. He's unbelievably good. And his wrestling is the best in the UFC at the moment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the Dricus du Plessis and Hamzat fight. I do think Hamzat wins, but yeah, we'll see what happens. So in 12th place, I've got Belal Muhammad because even though he just lost to Jack Della Maddalena, he was on a 10-fight win streak before the loss, fighting people like Leon Edwards, having a win over Gilbert Burns, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque. Those are pretty good names to add to your resume. So yeah, I mean, he does deserve the 12th spot. He was champion as well. However, he has no title defenses because, of course, he lost to Jack Della Maddalena, who is very, very elite, by the way, and is going to cause Islam Makhachev problems. As well as this, he is in the 12th spot because, although he could be higher because he's been champion and, yeah, he's had quite a lot of good wins, he has a lack of finishes. Most of his fights end in a decision. So, of course, I feel like if you have more finishes where you're able to finish your opponent within the 5 rounds instead of keep going to decision, I feel like you should be higher on the pound for pound list. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why Belal Muhammad is 12. Very, very good fighter nevertheless. However, obviously he's going to struggle in his next fights because, as you know, the welterweight division is the most hardest division, in my opinion, of the sport at the moment. So many talents, prospects, Marco Morales and all that. So yeah. So moving on, my 11th spot is Max Holloway. Max Holloway is unbelievable. I mean, he's gone up to 155 now and he's beat Justin Gaethje and now he's beat Dustin Poirier. And the Dustin Poirier fight, from scoring it, I had it 49-46. It was not close. You know, Max Holloway is so fast in 155 that, yeah, he's just too good. The only reason I've got him at 11 is because he hasn't been a champion since 2019. Of course, he's the BMF champion, but he hasn't been the standard champion since 2019. So yeah, but however, he has an unbelievable UFC record, 23 wins, 8 losses. And don't forget, 3 of those losses are against Volkanovski. If Max Holloway only fought Volkanovski once, he would be 23-6. So yeah, he has an unbelievable record. He's 33, so he has a long time left in the sport. But yeah, I see Max Holloway staying in the pound for pound rankings for a very, very long time still. He's just too good, and I do think he's going to verse Oliveira next. I think that rematch will happen because, of course, the first fight, as we know, Oliveira got injured. I do favour Max Holloway in that fight, but of course, I'm not downplaying Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is very, very good. I just feel like Max Holloway at 155 has just been unbelievable recently. So number 10, I've got Alex Pereira, and I can't lie, I really miss this guy being champion. He was the most active. Every single title defense he's got a finish. And like Yuri Prohaska hasn't lost to anybody else in the UFC apart from Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira generally is one of the best UFC fighters on the roster, and his memorable title run will be always remembered. Of course, he just lost to Magomed Ankalaev, and in my opinion, I thought it was kind of a close fight. You know, Alex Pereira, great takedown defense. There was always this like opinion that Alex Pereira could not wrestle, could not defend takedowns and all this. But in the Magomed Ankalaev match, he defended every single takedown, so he was very good at that. Of course, he's number 10 because although he's just lost his title, he had 3 title defenses as a champion, and all 3 of those title defenses was a finish. So he has that knockout power to get quite a lot of finishes in most of his UFC fights. But I mean, he's stopped Prohaska twice, although the first one, people did say it was an early stoppage. Of course, he knocked out Roundtree Jr., and then of course he knocked out Jamal Hill. So yeah, I mean, he's a very good UFC fighter. He has a rematch against Magomed Ankalaev in October. Do I think he wins this? Unfortunately not. I do think Ankalaev will beat him by decision. But that's not going to take away all the brilliant things he's done in the octagon. In ninth place, I've got Jack Della Maddalena, and this guy truly shocked me. After the Gilbert Burns win, of course he lost the first 2 rounds and was on track to lose the decision to Gilbert Burns. However, of course, he finished him in the 3rd round. I thought he wasn't going to beat Belal Muhammad, and then I think it was 49-46 as well. So yeah, he's now won UFC gold. Of course, he'll fight Islam Makhachev later on down the year. And of course, if he does beat Makhachev, he'll be way higher in the pound-for-pound rankings. But generally just a great UFC fighter. Of course, he's got a record of 8-0 in the UFC. He is also 28 years old, so he's relatively young yet in the UFC and has got plenty of fights to do before retiring. So I do think he will go higher up in the pound-for-pound rankings. But yeah, the Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena fight is going to be huge. So in number 8, I've got Magomed Ankalaev, who recently won his bout against Alex Pereira. Of course, he's defended it again against Alex Pereira. I do think he wins it, and I do think he will get that title defense on his record. But yeah, number 8, I mean, he is a very good fighter. 12 wins, 1 loss in the UFC. Been on a 12-fight win streak ever since his first loss to Paul Craig. So yeah, and the problem is with Magomed Ankalaev is he would have been champ a long time ago, because the Blachowicz fight, he clearly won. Most people thought he clearly won anyway, so he would have been champ anyway before. The main criticism that Magomed Ankalaev gets is being perceived as one-dimensional, relying heavily on measured striking and risk-averse tactics. And the problem with Magomed Ankalaev's record is it doesn't have too many big names. Like Yuri Prohaska, he has not fought Yuri Prohaska. Of course, the Blachowicz fight was a draw, even though it clearly wasn't. He hasn't fought Roundtree Jr., Jamal Hill. Though I do feel like he will fight Yuri Prohaska very soon. Because, I mean, Yuri Prohaska is a very good fighter. He's only lost to Alex Pereira in the UFC. So, yeah. But I think, as I said again, I think he beats Alex Pereira in more dominant fashion than the last. Of course, last time his fight with Alex Pereira, he didn't get to land a takedown and had low takedown accuracy. Though I think this time he will be able to land a takedown. But yeah, I mean, I feel like he's going to get more than 1 title defense. I feel like he's going to go up in the pound-for-pound rankings continuously. And yeah, he's a very good fighter overall. Moving on, Tom Aspinall, previously on the pound-for-pound rankings, currently is number 9. However, I've put him as number 7, above Jack Della Maddalena and Magomed Ankalaev, because Tom Aspinall is the most dominant UFC fighter currently, where he is 9-1 in the UFC, but basically undefeated, as we know what happened in the Curtis Blades match. He has 8 finishes in 9 UFC matches, and yeah, he's just won the bout. Of course, he was out for the year because of the John Jones fight not being scheduled, and then of course John Jones retired, so then Tom Aspinall automatically got the bout. But yeah, I mean, average fight time in UFC history stands at 2 minutes 19 seconds. That shows you how dominant he is. And that's why I had to put him as 7, because he is finishing every single opponent he fights, and without getting hurt. I've never seen him get hurt in the UFC octagon. Hardly takes any damage. Just knocks out his opponents or submits them. in the first round. So yeah, a proper dominant champion. You have to have him at 7. Of course, he's fighting Cyril Gane next. I do think he beats Cyril Gane, surely. There are people saying Gane has a chance, but I do think Tom Aspinall will make easy work of it. And yeah, what a great fighter Tom Aspinall is. He will go higher up in their pound for pound rankings because he's just too dominant. He's going to absolutely wipe out the heavyweight division. And yeah, just stay on top. In 6th place, I've got Alexander Volkanovski. It was really great seeing him get his UFC title back against Diego Lopez. I thought Diego Lopez was going to beat him, so I was quite surprised when Alexander Volkanovski won. But there again, he showed he's got levels and he's still got it in this game. You might be thinking, why is he number 6 when he's 2-3 in his last 5 fights? You gotta remember, he lost to only the current number 1 and number 2 pound for pound fighters. Apart from that, he's been completely dominant, 14-3 record in the UFC, and also having 5 title defenses. So yeah, I mean, he's only lost to the best of the best. Losing to the current pound for pound number 1 and number 2, you know, I don't think that takes anything away from Alexander Volkanovski, and I still think he should be number 6. Of course, looking back at the current pound for pound rankings, he's currently number 6 on there as well, so I think this is a correct decision and the correct spot where Volkanovski should be. In number 5, I've got Dricus du Plessis, who is currently 9-0 in the UFC. I did not expect him to go 9-0 in the UFC because he always had this type of weird fight style. So I thought he would eventually lose. However, he's been completely dominant, has 2 title defenses, and is set to fight Khamzat Chimaev today. I think Chimaev beats him today, but I mean, of course, I could be wrong because we do know in the later stages, Khamzat Chimaev does get quite tired, and Dricus du Plessis might take over. Of course, looking at his resume is brilliant so far. Whittaker, Strickland, Adesanya, my favourite UFC fighter, unfortunately. But yeah, great wins. Of course, the Strickland rematch, people did say that Strickland didn't deserve that rematch and should have fought Whittaker before getting it. Though I thought it was okay because, I mean, the first fight with Dricus and Strickland was extremely close. And Strickland is a world-class fighter. He's very underrated in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's a huge name on your resume. In 4th place, I've got Merab Dvalishvili, and I know he is number 3 currently on the pound for pound ranking. I've put him in number 4 because I feel like Pantoja should be higher than him. He has 4 title defenses, and yeah, I just feel like if you have more title defenses, you should be higher up than the other person. And as we all know, Pantoja is incredibly underrated, and of course 4 title defenses. Yeah, it's insane. Of course, Merab Dvalishvili is only on 2 title defenses, so that's why I've put him as number 4 instead of number 3. Of course, talking about Merab Dvalishvili, he's on an 11 fight win streak and 13-2 in the UFC. He's been unbelievable, and his resume stacks up to be as one of the bantamweight GOATs. So he is going to fight Corey Sanhagen now. I do think he beats Sanhagen. I really, really do. But I mean, look at the names on his list. Henry Cejudo, Sean O'Malley. It just goes on and on. And of course, the Sean O'Malley rematch, he made it easy work. He made it easier than the first match. He submitted Sean O'Malley, and yeah, and of course his cardio. His cardio is absolutely insane. Of course, if Merab Dvalishvili beats Corey Sanhagen, he may go up to number 3 for me. But that's the only reason I put him as number 4, because I feel like Pantoja has more title defenses. He should be higher. So yeah, and I feel like Pantoja never gets the respect he deserves. That's the only reason. But yeah, of course, Merab Dvalishvili, unbelievable UFC fighter. Probably will go up in the pound for pound ranking still. I don't know who beats him because he's just too good. His cardio is unbelievable, as everyone says. And yeah, deservedly so, he's in the top 5 for the pound for pound rankings. As said previously, I've put Alexander Pantoja as number 3. You know, he's finished his last 2 opponents by rear naked choke as well, and now has 4 title defenses. And he's of course looking for the 5th one against Joshua Van, which will happen, I think, end of the year. I think so. But yeah, he's on an 8 fight win streak, and you know, his title run has been unbelievable and truly an underrated fighter that should be talked about way more, you know. But yeah, he definitely deserves to be number 3 in the pound for pound rankings. Absolute dominating the flyweight division. So yeah, should stay as number 3, or should move to a number 3, I mean. So in number 2, I've got Ilia Topuria. I know he's number 1 currently in the pound for pound rankings, but I will explain later on when going on to the number 1 why I've put Ilia Topuria as number 2. Though Ilia Topuria is the biggest star in the UFC at the moment, there is nobody bigger than him in my opinion. Of course, he has just come off of a knockout win over Charles Oliveira, so now he's the UFC lightweight champion, and he was also the featherweight champion with one title defense before he decided to go up to lightweight. And yeah, I mean, his resume is unbelievable. Alexander Volkanovski, KO, Max Holloway, KO, Charles Oliveira, KO. You know, that's an insane resume. Unbelievable. You know, a complete knockout artist at the moment. And yeah, I mean, there is strong case why he should be number one, and I get it. I do think there is a strong argument that he should be number one. Of course, there has been quite a lot of criticism to Ilia Topuria as well recently, though, because people are saying he's ducking Arman Tassarukian at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of criticism there. I mean, I feel like that fight is going to happen. Arman Tassarukian versus Ilia Topuria. That's a very hard fight for Topuria. But of course, as you know, Topuria has the skills to win. He's a great UFC fighter overall. So my number one is Islam Makhachev. You know, he's on a 16-fight win streak, the same win streak as Anderson Silva. And then after 4 title defenses, now he's decided to go up to welterweight to fight Jack Della Maddalena, compared to Ilia Topuria, who after 1 title defense decided to move up and get the belt. I just don't see why Makhachev moved down, you know, especially being on a 16-fight win streak. He hasn't lost. And I do think he beat Jack Della Maddalena anyway, so I feel like he's going to be number one again. But yeah, I mean, he's a great UFC fighter, of course. He's got big names on his list. Alexander Volkanovski twice, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira. Of course, Charles Oliveira fight rematch was going to happen. Of course, that didn't happen, so Volkanovski had to fight again on short notice. That's why some people don't really count that. And then the Renato Moicano, as we all know, Islam Makhachev was going to fight Arman Tassarukian, but then Tassarukian pulled out due to an injury, I think. And then he had to fight Renato Moicano. And what choice does he have? I know people are saying he's got terrible names on his list, terrible title defenses. But it's like, what choice does he actually have? But anyway, that concludes my pound for pound rankings compared to the current one. So yeah, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.